Welcome to the fourth hearing of the Committee's inquiry into modern slavery risks faced by temporary migrant workers in rural and regional New South Wales. I acknowledge the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are meeting today. I pay my respects to elders past and present and celebrate the diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures and connections to the lands and waters of New South Wales. I also acknowledge and pay my respects to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. My name is Dr. Joe McGurr. I'm Chair of the Committee. I ask everyone in the room to please turn their mobile phones to silent. Parliamentary privilege applies to witnesses in relation to the evidence they give today. However, it does not apply to what witnesses say outside of the hearing. I urge witnesses to be careful about making comments to the media or to others after completing their evidence. In addition, the Legislative Council has adopted rules to provide procedural fairness for inquiry participants, and I encourage committee members and witnesses to be mindful of those procedures. Now, to the witnesses, welcome and thank you for making time to give evidence. Now, could each witness, and perhaps we'll start with yourself, Melda, please state their name, position, title, and swear either an oath or affirmation.
My name's Wazakam Imelda Davis, and I'm the Chair of Australian South Sea Islanders, and I solemnly and sincerely, truly declare an affirmation that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Joseph?
Good morning, my name is Janelle Joseph. I'm the Director of Charity Tanner Projects. I solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence now about to be given by me shall be the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Thank you very much. Now, would you both like to start by making a short statement?
You go.
Okay, Ms. Joseph, and then Ms. Davis, and then Melda, and then we'll have the questioning. So over to you.
Do you mind if I read off
No.
the computer? Is that okay? I'm the Director of a charity group called Tanner Projects, which is a very small charity dedicated to the support and welfare of those living on Tanner Island in Vanuatu. So a lot of the evidence that I will give to you today will be based on my experience with Vanuatu workers. We have been in Vanuatu after Cyclone Pam around 2016, and we feed approximately 140 widows, elderly and disabled people in the area of White Sands, Tanner, taking shipping containers of warm clothes and blankets each year. After numerous visits and seeing the difficulties under the shadow of an active volcano and being 650 metres above sea level, we began to see the dire and desperate situation that they were in when the volcano spewed acid rain and volcanic ash, destroying their crops and their continued disappointment of not being able to grow a successful crop. We understood the economic importance of people to earn money besides growing their own food, and this sparked the idea of bringing people from the surrounding villages to work in Australia, taking the money home and help them build houses for their families and businesses for the future. So we connected with an approved employer in Griffith. We brought 33 workers in the first year, and this was rather a baptism of fire, living with 33 men who had never worked in Australia before, who lived a wonderful island time lifestyle, and now these workers were struggling to attend work each day, manage their money, resisting the urge to visit casinos for a quick dollar and drink kava and alcohol each day. Their working days were hard, getting used to 7 hours of work, then coming home, washing clothes, cooking food and getting ready for work the next day and falling into bed. But after about 3 short months, they got the hang of it and settled into a good rhythm. We've been helping these workers from Tanner for the past 4 years now, and each of them taking home approximately 20,000 Australian dollars, and this has changed their life drastically. Comparing the wage of, let's say, a teacher in Vanuatu who earns the equivalent of $90 a week, these workers taking home as much as 20,000 Australian dollars in 9-month period is staggering and life-changing. As we all know, the seasonal work program began as a 4-year pilot and then was formally introduced in 2012, mainly as an aid program to help the economic development of the nations in the Pacific and also fill the labour shortage in Australia in the agricultural sector. Currently, there are 6,080 Vanuatu workers in Australia on a 403 PALM visa. This doesn't include disengaged workers or workers on any other visa stream working in the agricultural sector. So let's do the maths. 6,080 workers making approximately 20,000 Australian dollars would be 120 million Australian dollars going into the Vanuatu economy. Dr. Stephen Howes at ANU states that in 2021, 12.2% of the working population of Vanuatu were either under the PLS, SWP or the RSE program. This program was bringing an enormous amount of money into the country whose main income traditionally is through tourism. But as we've seen, cyclones, earthquakes and COVID put a massive strain on the economy of Vanuatu with less tourists coming to the country. We all know that the program was never set up as an immigration or a cover for indentured servitude. Rather, it was an added bonus to help the Pacific nations with building and strengthening their economy. Recently, I was interested in the Labor Minister of Vanuatu's defending the seasonal work program, rejecting the comparison to the days of blackbirding. He suggested that his country was not subject to what happened to them 200 years ago, as the people who go to work receive money, bringing it back home to their families. The list of people wanting to come to work is numerous, and the visa demands high, with family and village chiefs signing off on the credibility of workers to Australia. And after 9-month placement, Australia also encourages them to return home. Recently approved employers and farmers under the PALM scheme whose livelihood has relied on the hard-working cooperative eager worker to get the crops in have been called to justify their work practices, their fair work law interpretations, their understanding of the obligations of migration visa requirements, the demands of unions, and are now battling the stigma of being accused of being exploitative and unscrupulous, whose farm is a breeding ground for contemporary forms of slavery. In a report for the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Contemporary Slavery, I became very concerned at the focus of the report being levelled at the PALM schemes failing and the lack of accountability. The report on page 3 stated, "This report documents some of the most severe cases of migrant exploitation that IARC has encountered over the 5 years of visa assist, with some suffering slavery-like conditions at the hand of unscrupulous employers. The report will examine Pacific Palm Labour Ability Scheme because they have been advised that many vulnerable clients were under this scheme." It also states on page 4, the exploitation of workers under the Pacific Labour Ability Scheme is well documented. The examples provided in this report were only of 3 visa categories. Only one of those was a 403 visa, which is the only visa that can be obtained under the PALM scheme. Any other visa type cannot be obtained under the PALM scheme. This was hardly an example of the scheme being a breeding ground for contemporary forms of slavery. I was also hard-pressed to find this well-documented proof of extensive and systematic abuse. What I'm concerned about is the misinformation that is projected to the PALM scheme and by default onto all farmers and labour hire companies, when I know and I have extensively experienced that most of the workers who are being exploited have been exploited by crime syndicates or unregistered labour hire companies, or even, at worst, their own countrymen. When a worker who disengages from the PALM scheme is lured by more money or perceived liberties and freedom to choose where he works, he or she then decides to find work outside of the scheme. They are no longer considered a PALM worker. Yet, as you can see from the reports, there's no differentiation between the two. Let me please make this very clear. I'm not suggesting that there are not businesses that are taking advantage of workers. I have found many, and I have cause to report, and I have questioned the practice of many businesses within and without the program. I've also called to account landlords who allow 12 to 15 people living in a 4-bedroom house under horrific conditions, charging high rent. But these are mainly disengaged workers. I've called them to account not because the worker complained, but because I've attempted to raise the standard for the landlord and the worker. Unfortunately, COVID changed the working landscape for all businesses, And this is where Tanner Projects was inundated with calls for help for many workers who felt their liberties were restricted or their work hours had been unfairly reduced. And therefore, they were victims of unfair work practice and slavery conditions with their freedom of movement restricted. Our willingness to help them after some investigation was always an option, but most times evidence of poor treatment was not evident. Some were begging to just move from farms because they wanted to be with family in Griffith, and they had heard that there was plenty of work in the area, and there was plenty of work. There was a desperate need for workers, but not at the risk of violating the visa conditions. We have many varied stories that will shake your head, make you shake your head. Only 6 months ago, I received a call from a worker in Tamworth who'd only just arrived under the palm screen from Tonga. He wanted to be with his family in Griffith and begged for me to find him work. His circumstances were good. They were satisfactory. And even he begged to leave and come to his family in Griffith, but if I couldn't find him work, he would disengage. I have letters from workers under a 416 visa being exploited by Chinese contractors, and after receiving dodgy migration advice from multicultural centres, have now become victims, ending up with a ruined visa history. I was also involved in work situations with young men from Vanuatu. Personally, I'd met with them in their island, a group of 12 workers, and I had meticulously pulled apart the letter of offer under the PALM scheme, explaining in detail the information, obligations and services available to them while they were in Australia. Explaining to them the ramifications of disengagement and how this would affect them, I asked if there were any questions, and they all knew that disengagement was not an option and promised to finish the end of the term of their contract. But 4 months into the contract, a young man we'll call Ray decided to follow his family members who absconded years prior. Ray was getting brilliant money where he was and the promise of return work for the future, but the lure of the perceived freedom caused him to disengage. My experience under the PALM scheme with disengaged workers, particularly in Griffith, has caused me great concern. From receiving dodgy advice from multicultural centres, their severe naivety of how it works, poor personal adult decision making, and deciding that not being allowed to smoke on site of the farm, not being allowed to get drunk each day or not turning up, and their restrictions of liberties. This was unfair treatment, and therefore they considered themselves a slave. It's astonishing to me that disengaged workers are still classified as palm workers when clearly they've chosen to or forced to withdraw from the program. Many of the workers who approached me to help them find work had no intention of re-engaging back with the program and were happy to be in violation of their visa conditions.
Ms. Joseph, have you got much more to go?
No, I don't have.
Okay.
I don't have, sorry.
That's okay.
I
Because
know
I was going to suggest you could table it, but that's fine.
I can.
Keep going.
I
it's
can.
very important to hear what you've got to say.
I can do that, no problem. It's been very difficult. The UN rapporteurs also suggested that they need to get freedoms of movement, but this won't work for the approved employer and the farmer. Okay, I'll just scroll down a little bit. In my experience, DUA has always welcomed feedback. They've opened phone complaint lines and encouraged strategies to combat disengagement. DUA's main focus has always been on the welfare and well-being of the workers in Australia, and they monitor the placement of workers to ensure that they have the same work rights as everybody else. There is no doubt in my experience that vulnerable workers are subject to exploitation, and these have been disengaged workers from the PALM scheme or those that come on other visa schemes, and as they make their own adult decisions, they become vulnerable to exploitation. But I have also seen that those under the PALM scheme have the safeguards that they need to protect them. The most rewarding thing about what we do is that this is only a small percentage of workers that come under the program. We are, as charities, are delighted that these workers take home so much money and it actually changes their lives.
Thank you. Ms. Davis, would you like to make a statement?
Yes, please. Thank you, and thanks for that insight to the great work that you're doing. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that we're on Gadigal country. These lands were never ceded, always was, always will be Aboriginal land. My name, or my custom name from Vanuatu, bestowed on me by the Nicolaitan chiefs of Tana Uta, is Wasakam. And I carry that name with pride as a leader in this country, and Ni Vanuatu dual citizen now, to advocate for the rights of our seasonal workers and families, in particular Vanuatu I represent. I'm grateful for being included at such short notice. I don't know if Stephen's here. I've never seen Stephen, but either way, I got a call yesterday. Thanks, mate. Yesterday afternoon, and I sort of had a dummy spit, but that's all right. This is really important work, and I'm really thankful to be included, and it's great to see Jenny Leon, one of our great human rights activists and politicians, here today to support. I'm a second-generation descendant of Australia's first seasonal workers scheme, indentured labour blackbirding of the Pacific, which started here in New South Wales in 1847. Benjamin Boyd, who you may know, celebrated entrepreneur, Benjamin Boyd Road, Benjamin Boyd National Park, was the first to bring our people, some 200 from Tana, and slave alongside Maori and Indigenous slaves. So this is not new to our nation, in that there were 60-odd thousand brought here after that Boyd expedition to Queensland. And my grandfather, my mother's father, was 12 years old, stolen from Tana off the beach. So we have a very deep lived experience and understanding of what it means to, I guess, survive some of the challenges that we're facing, and especially, some 178 years of oppression alongside our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander families. We were placed on the same missions, stations and plantations. And time again I've asked Department of Foreign Affairs, DUA, and all of these great agencies that are looking after our families coming into this country to have blackbirding as a preamble and an education for our Asia Pacific region, so that people know the context in which they're dealing with our country and our policies, especially coming under a White Australia policy, right? And remnants of that still exist today in this 403 visa. So our organisation, I sit before you unfunded, 15 years of voluntary work, no ulterior motives here. And I guess my question today is, what is the rationale behind this particular inquiry, and what do you want to achieve? Because we've had from the inquiry, because for us as Australian South Sea Islanders, which are 70,000 strong guesstimate, because we are very much a part of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander demographic, I guess we want to see decentralisation of this PALM scheme because of the experiences that we've had historically, and also what we're experiencing today in people reaching out still, and the amount of deaths and a number of other issues that have come to our table, because people reach out to us because we look like them, right? 67% of this seasonal worker or PALM scheme is Melanesian. We are the black-skinned people of the Pacific. And Vanuatu is a large proportion in representation of this program. And we need to have a strong cultural framework, very strong cultural framework, as we do with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in this country. Everyone's acting like it's rocket science, and we're not dealing with other Indigenous nations. But we're distinctly different, but we are the same in terms of some of the cultural protocols, because we are Melanesian. Torres Strait Islanders are Melanesian. Australia sits in the Melanesian region of the Pacific. Australia is home to the largest Melanesian population outside of their nations, Pacific nations. So there is a little bit of a read that I've got here, and excuse me, it's such important work, and I guess coming from that lived experience and witnessing the struggle for Australian South Sea Islanders for recognition, and it's still being sidelined since 1994, 1903, when the first deportation orders came in to send back a large amount of our people under a White Australia policy, and the advocacy that's gone on, and I've lived through as an activist through my own family. So just wanting to really put that on the record, and those that know me will like, probably here she goes again, but that's okay. It's important to understand that the workers are not commodities, but human beings. Therefore, all policies, whether the Australian or Vanuatu government, must be people-to-people centred. Yeah, we talk about this top-down approach, and I've been told through many discussions, even in travelling to Vanuatu, but we are the government, so we have to take that top-down approach. But people are the centre, regardless of you're in government or not. It's a human rights issue, and we need to think about that and look at how we can work better together. And respect cultural frameworks. We have a reconciliation action plan in this country for First Nations people. It's not rocket science, people. Yeah, self-determination is key. We have the solutions to our problems. Yes, I was born here, but my DNA is strongly connected. The stamp is on my face, back to my people. We're working from a cultural and a spiritual context, not just, bureaucratic. Yeah. So,
Ms. Davis, we are keen to have some questions, and we've only got about 10 minutes left to running over. So I don't want to cut you off.
Should have went first.
But
okay.
But
Sorry, Darren.
keep going. But
all right. So
I know the committee's keen to just explore a couple of questions.
yeah. Okay. So with regards to the economic gain to Australia, it is estimated that 2/3 of the workers' earnings stay back in Australia, and only 1/3 is remitted back to Vanuatu. Labour mobility workers, the PALM scheme, contribute economically to two different categories in Australia, namely one, the industry they work in, example, agriculture sector, where the biggest number of Vanuatu workers are, with a whooping revenue in a single financial year of over $89 billion. And two, the everyday living expenses such as accommodation and transport, excursions, food, clothing, etc. The following figures are to be noted for Vanuatu workers only. So imagine all those other Pacific nations. And how are you working? All these, I guess, juror, etc. I question how they work with our heads of mission that represent those nationals in this country. There's not enough transparency. So the following figures, yes, so for Vanuatu, the injection of over $65 million annually in accommodation and over $45 million in transportation. In tax, direct and indirect, the workers from Vanuatu pay roughly $50 to $60 million annually. This amount represents 67% of the total aid to Vanuatu given the Australian government. I guess I come here in recognition of the some 40-odd babies that are born each year in Australia, 40-odd children of this scheme. And I want to acknowledge that they are adopted out while others are sent home. And how can these babies claim citizenship in Australia in the future? I also sit here before you in recognition of the number of deaths since 2020 for our people. Some 36 people have died, and as per history has it, some 15,000 in terms of people that died in giving their lives and working for this country for a better future. So when we talk about some of these, I guess, contributions from all these wonderful people that have forthcoming and sharing the insights of what and how we can change and work together better. I think we need to be mindful about the power of balance. We need to be mindful about the fact that some of this research, in particular by Dr. Stephen Howes, is also could be seen as a conflict of interest because they're paid top dollar to do this work and deliver the pastoral care services that people are reporting on. That should be really audited, but I'll leave it there and hopefully.
Thank you very much, Ms. Davis. I'm going to have the first question, and I'm actually going to come back to you, Ms. Joseph. I think you've outlined in your evidence that the PALM scheme is well regulated and provides enormous benefit both to agriculture industries here, but also in terms of income going back to Vanuatu. But you have highlighted also that there are a cohort of disengaged workers that are quite vulnerable, and I think it's becoming quite clear to the committee that, in my view, that this is the area of concern, not the scheme itself, which seems to be quite well regulated, but what happens with workers who leave it. I'm just interested in your experience. What are the reasons, you began to talk about this, what are the reasons people leave the scheme and really put themselves in quite a difficult position? Are you able to elaborate on that a bit further?
Absolutely. When I was in Griffith, arriving in Griffith and taking the young men to open bank accounts, there were people who would approach these young fellas and asking them whether they could come on their farm, whether they had farm work, etc., how much were they getting, and offering them quite large sums of money to come and work for them. And of course I would shoo them away and say, go. The lure of a bigger dollar, was sometimes and often the reason why they would be encouraged to disengage. The approved employers do try to find dry accommodation for a lot of the workers, but a lot of the workers prefer to drink, and so therefore the freedom to drink and to go to casinos and the freedom to make adult choices is also a number of the reasons why they disengage. Recently I bumped into some young people at Wiseman's Ferry, and all the way from Tanner, talked to them in their language, and they were quite surprised. I asked them to meet with me, but they were not interested. The freedom to just be able to stay in Australia, earn the money that they want, spend the money that they want, tell their family how much they're getting was a much better position for them, rather than being under scheme where they felt that they were, herded into a particular direction.
So just to clarify, they either found another visa category?
No, they didn't find another visa category. Some of them obtained advice that getting a protection visa and therefore you could stay in Australia under a protection visa was fine, and therefore that lure was great, that it takes 5 years to process a visa, so don't worry, you can stay here and earn money for that period of time. Or they just hid from authorities with no visas at all. Okay,
thank you. I'm going to leave my questioning there.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you both for your opening statements. Ms Davis, I wondered if you wish to comment on the question just asked by the Chair, but also I guess the other thing that I wanted to get at was, I guess, to get a sense from you as to what you see as the potential solutions around this, recognising the history and the long history that you've talked about, both in terms of in this country and indeed in the Pacific. When, as we heard from Ms Joseph, there is such a significant economic inequality and inequity between Australia and the countries that are engaging. And I guess I'm really keen to hear from your perspective, how do we start a conversation that actually looks at ensuring that these workers and indeed their families and the young people that are born as a result of them working here are respected and treated with dignity when we know that the economic inequity is so huge that it is very difficult to know how we tackle that. So I'm very happy for you to comment on the Chair, but I guess I'm really keen to take your expertise on where you see how we start to tackle some of these challenges.
Thanks for that question, Jenny, and I really do think that this whole decentralisation, because this management from the top and how that's, I guess it's a government to government program, right? And the conversations between memorandums of understanding sit with the countries, the decision making. All levels of government should be involved in the, do you say overseeing, or the, implementation of this particular scheme, because all New South Wales ministers, members of parliament, should be across the needs for our people. All local governments need to be across the needs of these people coming into these communities. So when you have that transparency and greater understanding, local governments, there's a resolution of council that I bought, I don't know if you've got an opportunity to see it, on outreach services for seasonal workers, working with the heads of mission, informed. Those people sitting in Canberra who know the lived experience and the daily challenges and the legal policies and, all of those things that happen for our nationals that come to this country. I say our because I'm Ni Vanuatu descent. It's necessary, because unless you sit down at the table and talk to each other, no one's going to really understand. And unless you've got lived experience, how can you possibly say you can understand what we're going through? There's certain things you do understand, obviously, human rights abuses, etc., and how one person or one human being wants to treat another. But the thing is, there's a whole cultural context to the people that are coming into this country, and distinct cultural difference is paramount in how people communicate and work with their employment providers. Look, I feel strongly that the workers should be able to work directly with farmers. I think there are mechanisms there that can be looked at where people have freedom of choice, especially if this 403 visa is changed.
Yeah, we've heard a lot of issues around the exploitation risks of people being tied to one particular
and you've got reports that I've skimmed over yesterday, but not really grasping all of it. But what stood out for me is that people are saying that, that the PALM scheme is improving. Well, one life lost is devastating for any scheme. Yeah, we can't sit here and say it's improving when there's 36 people that have been sent home since, in a box, just Vanuatu alone, since 2020. Like, how can you even write that off? And that's the cultural distinct difference, because the people that they're engaging as a part of all these Pacific representation organisations, they have a disconnect. You have Polynesia, I don't know if people comprehend the Polynesia, the Melanesia, and the Micronesia. 3 different demographics that are living in this country. I'm Melanesia. How many Melanesians have sat here and spoken to this inquiry in these last few weeks?
Can I just clarify?
I'm interested.
So just to say that we have a lot of the evidence that we have heard from people with lived experience, and this committee has been trying to do that work very hard, has meant that a lot of that has happened in camera because people don't feel comfortable talking publicly, but also to reassure you that we are in conversations now trying to have conversations with some of the non-government MPs in home countries, if you like, so that can be exposed. But I think that the bigger challenge that we're facing is the fact that there is, at least to the comments that have been made around support and how that is done, is that there seems to at least be anecdotal evidence that community members are not put with people from their own countries.
No.
And so there's a lot of splitting, which may be a risk of further disempowering people.
That's right.
And so I think that's something that we haven't got to the bottom of yet, but we are looking at that as well as a potential risk of some of these, slightly dodgy labour hire firms making decisions like that because it's easier to manage the collective response of people.
But,
sorry, Che, you were going to...
But also... go on.
I just wanted to clarify, you said 36 deaths since 2020 of Vanuatu people who've come over on the scheme.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. Sorry.
And people are dying from dehydration because they don't comprehend that you need to, work in these conditions and have regular drinking water. And then there's other instances. I've travelled all across this country with our Vanuatu High Commission. We've been to Tully, Cairns, Townsville, Ayr, Tweed Heads, Mareeba, all voluntary because of fielding these calls that are coming through because people hear of Australian South Sea Islanders. But when we get in front of, government officials, it's deaf ears, and the thing is, the visa is the biggest issue here. We need to open it up. We live in a democratic society. No one should be tied to anyone, and no one should be fearful. There's a freedom of choice in this country. You can't have one rule for some, backpacker visa, where they have the freedom to walk around and leave their employers, and then you have the 403, which ties our Melanesian labourers to their overseer. It's not happening.
Yeah.
It can't happen.
Yeah. Just the other one I'll take on notice, because we're running short of time, but just to ask Ms Davis if you'd be happy to provide further details of individuals or organisations, or indeed others that you've worked with that you think would be useful for this committee to hear from or to approach to get their response from. Please do share those through, and maybe take that on notice and then share some details so we can consider that as this inquiry continues.
And
we might take that as a question on notice.
Yeah.
I think, Mr McDonald, you'd like to ask a question.
Well, I have a question. I'm not sure how to phrase it to you, Ms Joseph. You mentioned, I guess, your organisation commenced because of the cyclones. How do you see, with those cyclones and disasters, affect, say, the workers' financial decisions? When they come to New South Wales, in terms of their willingness to, if conditions aren't up to scratch, or they're not getting what they should be getting, because of the situation back home, are they not willing to then complain about it because they don't want to upset what's happening? And it doesn't have to just be cyclones, because I understand, that there's that inequity there in what they receive. So do you think, and I think you said it's another form of aid. Do we need to reframe how this scheme is packaged so that it I don't know. So if you can...
Sure. I think I understand the question. When I went over to Vanuatu after Cyclone Pam, the place was devastated, and it was actually quite... it's like a bomb had hit it, to be honest. And it's quite daunting to decide that you're going to bring 33 workers out to Australia, and hopefully they're going to, go to work every day and do what you had to do. Part of the charity was to teach them business and finance, those kinds of things for them to be able to take home to their own families, which is what we do. We teach them how to, shop very well, how to save their money, and how to cheaply send their money home, all those sorts of things, and get them food and all that sort of stuff. They are concerned, but most of them dedicate themselves into sending money home to their own families, and rather than spending
that,
here.
But I'm just thinking, because of the situation, are they putting themselves in unacceptable situations because they have this, I won't say obligation, but they're wanting to help home. So sometimes they're putting themselves at risk by, not intentionally, just because of their desire to help their families, and so they're at risk.
A lot of them do, but often the disengaged worker
are taken advantage of.
Do get taken advantage of.
I feel like that's part of it. In that, sorry, I'm taking up the time there, but
you're right.
Because of their situation, they are being taken advantage of, or put at extra risk, or coerced into saying, well, and then their expectations aren't being met.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely right. And their disappointment, and they're always ringing me up saying, I was at this farm, have you got other work for me? Is there somewhere else that I can, I was here for 6 weeks, and they're always chasing the next lot of work,
So-
which means that in between times of work, there could be a period of time where there is no work, but they've still got to pay the rent, they've still got to pay all those kinds of things, and
So
that's
how
why
do we
14
better-
and 15 in a house works.
How can we better mitigate that so that they're not placed in those horrible situations? Because we value the work
Yes.
and what they bring and the culture and everything like that. Because I live in a regional town where the town has changed because of
Yeah.
the
Yes.
workers, and we've got different foods, we've got
Yeah.
shops
Absolutely.
now that we didn't have before.
No. And they've brought wonderful cultural things
Yeah.
to you, yes, and opened it up, yes.
and colour and life.
That's
and,
right.
But it seems to be that we're taking more than we're giving.
Yes.
I completely agree with that. And also, you've got to remember the liabilities for these workers that are coming here. Sometimes whole villages have contributed to their airfares,
Yeah.
so they're already in debt, and they have to make
Yep.
that money to pay back and keep their word. Their word is their bond. So they're under this pressure, and this visa that locks them in
Yeah.
doesn't allow them to move. So therefore, they abscond, for want of a better word.
So
I
there
don't
needs to be
call
more
that.
flexibility then in that.
And
They
I think
need
there's
the
also, Ms Davis, I think there's also a risk that there's an approach that infantilises people coming over because they're in a vulnerable situation,
Yep.
when in actual fact those people are seen as the key connectors to community and the key
Yes.
people who are delivering for entire villages that are managing and navigating global politics,
Yeah.
international work,
Yeah.
and indeed potentially supporting entire communities back home. And there's a risk that it's seen over here as people sort of needing to be taught how to behave like an adult, when in actual fact these people are taking on a whole lot of courage. And I think there's a systemic racism that comes with that as well.
100%, and that's another thing I had here in my notes, is that there needs to be a lens on systemic racism across this program. The other challenge is people equate, I guess, I've spoken to workers and women across this nation about the fact that it's not Aussie if you don't drink. You got to have a beer, mate.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Now, you're talking about a country that doesn't have alcohol issues. You're talking about ascending country, Vanuatu in particular, I'm saying. And the other challenge is that their customary practices aren't understood in terms of drinking kava as traditional peoples,
Yeah.
you know. So the replacement, in some cases, is transferable through the influence of outside workers. If you've got a real Aussie farmer who's like, gun ho, do as, when in
Yep.
Rome. So you
Yes.
try to accommodate and act accordingly, yeah?
Yeah.
Now,
So there's a
thank-
lot of challenges around
I understand that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I'm going to, we've run over, but that's been important. Just a couple of things. I assume both of you would be prepared to answer questions on notice. I think Ms Leong's already flagged one.
Yeah.
I think the committee will have a number of other questions to follow up. I hope that's okay. Secondly, I think, Ms Joseph, you've prepared a more comprehensive document, and I wonder if you would consider tabling that or sending that through so that we've got that as a record.
Sure.
And anything that you've prepared, Ms Davis, the same, that unfortunately we had to cut off because of the limited time. I apologise about that, but if you
okay.
had something prepared and could table
Yeah.
it, that would be important. We'll follow up with questions as well to you to try and explore some of the key themes that have come out this morning around visa flexibility, disengagement, in particular systemic racism, and I'm sure there'll be other items.
Yep.
And finally, Ms Davis, you did send through resolutions of council,
Yeah, there's a systemic racism nom there as well.
but I wonder if we, rather than publishing all of these, I wonder if we can come back to you because there's clearly one that directly relates to this.
Yeah,
But
and the systemic racism.
Yes, but I don't want to table necessarily the other, because there's a number of other
Okay.
resolutions here about electrification of homes. And
Oh, yeah.
So
That's,
on. So can we just clarify which parts of this with you? We can do
Outreach.
that offline.
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
And the peer review.
And the peer review. Okay, perfect. All right, well, thank you very much. the Secretariat will contact you if there's any other questions. I'm sure that there will be. And can I just thank you very much for your participation this morning, and we'll call that part of the hearing to a close. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.